Cristiano Ronaldo is the problem at Manchester United. Or is he? Manchester United finished second last year under Alot and Solskjaer, and even though it wasn't the cleanest of seconds, many people expected that the addition of Rafael Varane, Jadon Sancho, and arguably the greatest player of all time, Cristiano Ronaldo, would be enough to begin challenging for the Premier League title. And at risk at rubbing salt in the wound, we all know that clearly didn't happen. And because of it, the Portuguese man has been labelled as the problem. But how can this be possible? Ronaldo hasn't been great, but can he really be the sole problem? The expendable piece of the puzzle? In theory, you probably could argue Ronaldo is a problem, but it doesn't take a long look at the rest of the Manchester United squad to figure out that there's plenty of other players with their own problems in the squad. And so, in the name of fairness, I think we should look at everybody else in the squad, including Ronaldo, and identify one problem that Manchester United will have to address in regards to that player. Ronaldo at the age of 37, while still being able to create some good moments, is clearly a shell of his former self and quite simply can't put up the same levels to match his legendary GOAT status. He's gone from being the most complete wide player of all time to being sort of a poacher that likes to drift around the pitch. And look, of course, part of this is due to age and injury, but as a striker now whose only real asset is to be able to score goals, it doesn't seem like the best option to spend the last years of his career in a team that can't really create chances for him. Pogba seems like he's out the door already, but his biggest problem on the pitch for Manchester United has always been that in central areas, especially against a good press, he loses the ball far too much for the good of the team. Pair that with the fact that he's never consistently had a role in the team as well. It's just never helped. This is a fact that he's actually admitted to in a recent interview with France. So Pogba, one of the most talented footballers I've ever seen in my life, but goodbye. Harry Maguire has become the talk of the town this season, and not for positive reasons, I'll tell you that much. But what I will say is, even though I don't agree with some of the criticism he's received, I do think some of it can be put down to poor structure. One area where Harry Maguire has undeniably been horrendous this season is his box presence, or should I say lack of it. Like, I can't stress this enough. He has simply been very, very below par in that regard, and if it's not going to improve, I don't know for Harry Maguire in this team. Lingard out the door. Matic lacks intensity. He's getting old. Bailly way too erratic. Not particularly impressive on the ball. Cavani. Is that brother still there? Wouldn't have bloody known. Rashford's decision making is typically his biggest criticism nowadays, but personally, I don't believe that's been the cause of his shocking season. Rashford has lacked the unmitigated hunger, the intensity of a top forwards. And honestly, when you watch him, he looks very timid. He plays without confidence. And pair that with the fact that he's been moved away from his strong left side, it just hasn't been great at all. Honestly, to me, Rashford looks like a player who plays with no idea of what he is on the pitch. Complain that Bruno loses the ball too much, but the reality is all playmakers lose the ball. That's the nature of the role. Bruno's biggest issue is the fact that he roams far too much, constantly out of position. And when you pair that with the fact that he isn't technically reliable in the biggest games like other top playmakers, look, as long as that's the case for Bruno, he will always be a limiting factor if United want to be a top possession-based side. De Gea isn't a bad goalkeeper. However, all the elite coaches value the things De Gea isn't good at. And so, if we're just being fair, he isn't as valuable as he once was at the highest level. Now, fortunately for De Gea, we've not been at the highest level for quite a while. But the moment an elite coach comes in and tries to implement a modern tactical system, De Gea will look insanely out of place. To be fair to Victor, he has a lot of the ball playing and on-ball qualities required to be a top centre-back. However, he lacks a lot of the physical ones. His acceleration isn't great, and too often he's easily bullied. Luke Shaw's lacked a lot of intensity this season, straight up just not sprinting at times when he should be, paired out with the fact that he's not necessarily had a consistent final ball or been as good as an outlet as he was in previous seasons. It's not been Shaw's greatest season. Rafael Varane hasn't really been that useful in possession. He's not helped us to sustain pressures, distribution from out the back hasn't been good in comparison to other ball-playing centre-backs, and quite frankly, in a back line that's been so horrific this season, he's not really been the leader we've needed either. And to be fair, you know, those are all things we knew about him when he was at Real Madrid anyway, so maybe I shouldn't really be complaining, but those are his biggest weaknesses. Tellez is someone that lacks a lot of athleticism, comes across very lackadaisical on the pitch as well, and for somebody who specialises in crossing, the truth is he's never consistently been a good crosser for us. When it comes to Sancho, Hannibal and Elanga, I can't really pick out anything. Like, maybe you can nitpick with Sancho and say, look, he's not really explosive in comparison to other top wingers in the Premier League, and that's going to affect his one-on-one ability. Cool, maybe you could do that, but it's not really going to be that much of an issue. The biggest problem for those three would be the fact that they're at Man United right now in terms of just development. Young players just haven't had a good time developing here over the past couple of years, it seems, and so that would be the biggest problem for them, but I don't see much of a problem with those three. Old. When it comes to McTominay, he's been blessed with a frame and size that most midfielders would die to have, but one of the biggest problems with him is that he doesn't know how to use his body well. He also lacks a bit of awareness sometimes. In transition, he allows runners to get by him. Bit more awareness, learning how to use his body will do him wonders. Henderson gets all the modern day keeper shouts, especially when he's compared to David De Gea, and it's true. Look, he claims crosses better with the ball at feet, better distribution, whatever, but he's not particularly amazing at all those things, especially when you compare him to other keepers that are good at those things. He's sort of a jack of all trades, master of none in that sense, and he seems like he probably will be out the door this summer, whether that be on loan or a permanent move. Fred's actually a tough one. His heart's in the right place, but he doesn't have the physical capacity at times. He has all the aggression, all the intensity you could possibly ask for in a midfielder, but sometimes he literally just gets bodied straight up. That's why we always get them highlights of him getting shrugged off the ball. If you gave Fred McTominay's body and frame and all that, you'd have a serious player there, but unlucky Fred. Diogo Dalot has had an impact in the first and second third as he's a lot more progressive than Wan-Bissaka, but in the final third he's had next to no impact and still doesn't really seem to be useful in that area of the pitch. And Wan-Bissaka is just way too aggressive in possession. He's not much of an impact in the first, second or final third, and for all his good one-on-one defending ability, he's way too indisciplined positionally. In conclusion, everybody has their issues. There's not one person who's the sole issue or the sole limiting factor on the squad. And this wasn't a video to advocate for me to just get rid of everybody in the squad, right? There would be players I can keep. There are players whose issues can be accommodated within the right system. I think it's just important that people understand that there isn't one sole issue. As a collective, we need to all be better. We need to find the right system to allow for a lot of these players to be accommodated, especially the ones who are going to be difficult to move on. And if we are going to have to move on from these players, it's going to be very important that we bring in the right profile so we don't make the same mistakes. And so I'd very much recommend all of you to watch this video right here where I discuss profiles and how you can identify the right profiles using the example of Donny van der Beek and his transfer to Man United.